All right, gentlemen, as much as many may have watched some of those matters as they transpired, but let's get to hear from both of you what actually transpired. Honorable Kalu, let's start with you.
All right, thank you very much, Chamberlain and Nigerians. It is our duty to always get Nigerians up to speed with what is happening in the parliament, and I really want to appreciate your channel for being on top of their game in bridging this gap to ensure that information is given from the horse's mouth. Yesterday, as you know, the all-important Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which did not survive in various dispensations, finally was laid before the House day before yesterday. And yesterday was for the consideration. And you know, it's an all-important bill because the survival of our democracy, the advancement of our democracy is hinged on it. And especially when the desire of Nigerians, the hunger of Nigerians is to have one or two places in the piece of legislation, adjusted to reflect the times we are in and to also cure the problems of the past in our electoral system. So we, because we are a diverse country, the colors of our diversity showed itself yesterday, and coming from various constituencies, you will not be shocked to know that many people have various interests. And those interests, they showed the true color of Nigeria yesterday. We started by looking at those sections that passed through without amendment. And then also we have those sections that we looked at that needed amendment. We were able to pass through section 2 to 5 without amendment. And then we have 7 to 22 without amendment. And then we have 24 to 34 without amendment. And then 38 to 48 without amendment. We did 50, we did 50, 51. We had issues with 52. That was where we stopped. And the ones that we actually amended, we amended 1, clause 1. We amended 6. We amended 23. And we amended 36, 37, and 49. We are trying to amend 52 before the issue started, where the issue of electronic voting or electronic transmission of results came up. But from what we observed in the House was divided. A part wanted it to be fully manual for transmission, and a part wanted it to be fully electronic. But there was a medial approach to it, which was proposed by Honorable Faleke, who said, why don't we do a combination of both at the discretion of INEC? It is possible to do electronic, we do electronic, and where we cannot, we do manual. Still, that did not pass through, irrespective of the fact that the voice vote was very obvious where it was going, both for the transmission of the result electronically, the first proposal and the second proposal. Now the question becomes, what happens in a situation like that? Usually the drafters of our House rule had this kind of situation in mind when they were drafting the House rules, and that made them to include what we call Order 11. Order 11 Rule 2, and if combined with Rule 7 as well, which says if there is a disagreement with the decision coming from the chair on any issue, the House could go into a division. And if it is raised by a member or a few members who feel that the decision coming from the chair was either biased or that the chair entered into the arena, it calls for the division of the House. And it is now the duty of the chair not to step down, but to appoint tellers. The tellers will now be able to take independent votes where each member will be able to cast their vote.
Okay,
when we can't know whether the voice vote had credibility or not. Or
that particular point.
So that is
We'll stretch that point as we proceed, but let's equally, just hang on a minute, we'll stretch that point in a moment, but let's equally get Honorable Yusuf to give us his perspective of what transpired. Go ahead, Honorable Yusuf.
Thank you, good morning. Simple. Consideration of Electoral Act, Bill 2021. Most of these items were passed in the 8th Assembly. The President refused assent. My opinion was that in 9th Assembly will have just dusted the document of 8th Assembly and represent, since on 3 occasions, areas the presidency raised issue which were corrected, and that under the first 6 months we'll have just have an electoral bill before us. But in the opinion of others, we should go back fully and rework it. I'm privileged to be a member of the committee on INEC, and I worked with my other colleagues on this. I want to make some things very clear. At every stage of our work, INEC told us that they are ready for electronic transmission. That there's no part of this country that cannot do electronic transmission. That they use it in Edo and Ondo. And that when people talk about network, there's a simple thing. If you get a message in an area where there's network fluctuation, what have you, the moment you step into where there's network coverage is good, it pops up on your phone. And as of today, I doubt if there are any community where you don't have POS, where you have this Ghana, Senegal.
Yeah, Honorable Yusuf, we'll get to that bit, but I hope you're tailoring it to what transpired on the floor of the House and why that rowdy session was.
What transpired simply yesterday was that when we got to section 52, we had some of two little skirmishes in the other area, but not much. It was section 52, transmission of result. Amendment was proposed that it should be electronically transmitted. And by my understanding, the majority of members voted for e-transmission, who was ruled otherwise. At that stage, I was not even in support of another amendment being proposed. Just like the spokesperson of the House, I wanted to exhaust the procedure laid out in our rule book. If the chair is not clear, maybe he ruled based on what he heard, and so 1 or 2 persons questioned it. He put the question again. If the voice vote is not clear to him or this challenge, we'll move to the next stage, which is division of the House. So my proposal yesterday was that let's stay on the First Amendment and exhaust the procedure. But in the wisdom of somebody, which I don't still feel is in the right direction, is in accordance with our rule, another proposal was made in an attempt to get us to a compromise. And to my understanding, the voice vote still went in favor of that amendment, but was ruled otherwise. It's a fact that when it comes to issues of election, emotions, interests are what comes up. But what I've come to understand is that at the level we're at, it's not every time you expect to win the argument. If it does not go in your favor, you prepare for next time.
Okay,
so I believe that we'll cross that today. But as for yesterday, what transpired was that members on the floor, by my understanding, voted e-transmission.
All right, we'll still get subsequent views, particularly when it gets to INEC, being a member of that committee on INEC from you as you progress. But, Honorable Kalu, now you built up almost to the next stage, and about the voice voting system. I know you've spoken about that on this program as well, about how this voice vote works and the impression people have about the voice vote. But what people saw yesterday, which you alluded to, it was clear where that was going, but it was ruled otherwise. So many just wonder Isn't that a clear violation of the rules of the House? I say, well, is it allowed to do that when it's clear that it's going one way and it's ruled otherwise?
Yeah, the power of the gavel is much. And the leader that controls the gavel...
Use of the power of the gavel.
...occupies a very sensitive position.
Honorable Gallo.
A position that must be guided by the rules of the House.
Okay.
And based on that, what ought to have happened yesterday was follow the rules. I don't speak for any political party. I don't speak as APC or PDP. I speak as the spokesperson of the House, as the image maker of the House, whom the public run to when they want to get clarification like you are asking now. Order 11 Rule 2 is sacrosanct. It's clear. Once there is a doubtful, there is a doubt on the judgment of the chair or the speaker, and a member who has the mandate of his constituent raises the issue that we should go into division, he should be obliged. There is nowhere in our rules that says that once members raise issue calling for division, that they should be ignored. So that is what offended a lot of members. And you know, as leaders, we hold our position as trustees for the citizens of this country and must always exercise it, bearing in mind that we are accountable to the people. Voice populi, voice Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God that we all worship. If the majority leans towards one side, this is democracy. It is by number. Our ruling must reflect that. So I believe, just like most members who've been trying to calm them down, that our rules must be obeyed. It has not gone so bad. Nigerians should have the confidence. I read something that you were just, reporting on Daily Times, where it said Nigerians, the National Assembly destroyed the hope of Nigerians. Nigerians should be hopeful. We have moved this discussion to today. And why we move it to today is to bring in both INEC, to hear them and compare whatever they are going to say against the report they give to the committees that they are able to do electronic voting. Let's see if they are going to go against what they have proposed or if they are going to stick to it. That is one. We're going to hear the NCC tell us whether POS work in every part of Nigeria or text messages work in every part of Nigeria. That is what we're going to hear. And we're also going to present debate that will lay credence to whether manual, combination of manual and electronic is to anybody's disadvantage. Those are the things we are going to do. But as you know, Nigerians should not lose faith in us, because in Parliament, these kind of things happen. People shout, people fight, but we are one house. We are moving for nation building. So be patient with us. We are going, I'm happy that finally it is here. Before we were accused that electronic voting, we've been induced not to bring it in. It was removed from the Electoral Act. Luckily enough, Nigerians have seen how rubber stamp we are. You know, we have always been accused. They have seen a very active parliament that is not displaying any issue of passivity on the things that are very important to Nigerians. So we are going to take it to the next level. It's an assurance that though we disagree, we will always come to the table and agree for the interests of Nigerians. That is what Honorable Nigerians.
There are different layers to this conversation. There's, the talk about rules, the conduct, the procedure that was followed, and of course the substantive matter, which is this particular amendment bill. But if we could just stay on that, the rules, the conduct, and the procedure we saw yesterday. A lot of Nigerians would also want to know why, just to get, clarification from you, why did the Deputy Speaker chair that session? And eventually we saw that the Speaker had to intervene. Why was that followed? Because I saw what happened at the Senate. It was the Senate President. So can you explain to Nigerians, at least to clear that part?
Yes, it is every chamber, like you have the House of Representatives and you have the Senate. They are guided by what they call the House rule. And in our House rule, it is the House rule gave mandate to the Deputy Speaker to be the chairman of the Committee of the Whole. It's not chaired by the Speaker of the House. That was why you saw every time we do consideration of reports, which Committee of the Whole handles, and also consideration of bills, the Deputy Speaker becomes the chairman of that committee, and the Speaker becomes a member. But his opinion on issues are also treated as strong opinion. You saw when he intervened. So it's just a product of our House rule. In the Senate, it's different. The President of Senate is still the chairman of the Committee of the Whole. That's why you saw him presiding yesterday. The Speaker couldn't do much because the gavel was not in his hand. The House rule has given the gavel to the Deputy Speaker as the chairman, just like the House rule has also given the members the power to go for division of the House if the need arises.
Right. Just to clear that, so I mean, there won't be different insinuations regarding that. But let me take you back to Honorable Yusuf and now begin to look at the substantive issues. So you built up to the point where you talked about, coverage and the procedure that was followed, at least process. INEC was around during this process. So the major contentious clause or section is that part that talks about electronic transmission. And there are two, well, at least there are two versions right now. The one that says the Commission may transmit results of elections electronically where and when practicable, and the other one that says it has to be at least adjudged, possible by the NCC, and then the National Assembly must approve it. For you, what's the difference?
Yeah, what the second one you mentioned is purely the Senate version that came out yesterday. So it's not in any way for consideration in the House. We don't have that version that says NCC and National Assembly must give approval. If I remember vividly, the Constitution did not give such power to any other organization, any other body to give INEC instruction. So I think that should be contested in court, and people will get court to make a right interpretation. But where we are now is that the proposal from the committee that what was in the Electoral Act ab initio should be retained. That is, INEC should be given the discretion to decide what to use. That is where we have contentious issues. Members feel, even at the committee level, the committee will be comprises of INEC, Civil Society Group, Attorney General Office, member of the Senate and House of Rep Committee. We had finished this work as of January 30th this year. So at that level, it was a consensus thing that there is no way presently in Nigeria you cannot get data sent via electronic. Come to think of it, since 2011, data is already being transmitted electronically. Card reader data. We've been using card readers in 2011 election. So what we are just adding to the card reader responsibility is to say after election, the results that are collated and each party's results will now be inputted to. But because before now, until what you get is that accredited voters is inputted, number of people who voted, the difference between those who voted and those who did accreditation, and the total number of voters in that unit are all inputted in the card reader. So we have to just add the results to it, and there will still be manual. The intention of this amendment and transmission is to say, hey, if there are peradventure, there's any need to doubt what is on paper, you go to the electronic data to get what was transmitted in the unit. And I was trying to tell us that if as a nation we desire genuinely good governance, we should know that one of the major cause of challenge to good governance is when citizens doubt the legitimacy of government. And a lot of time, it might not be true. The story flying around that election were rigged might not be true. But truth does not only require it be truth, you need to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt. That is why we followed the American last election. The areas that were challenged, manual and electronic, was matched to see if the result is in line with the genuine aspiration of the people. So I want to appeal to Nigerians not to have faith in us, and to continue to put pressure on their representatives to do the right thing. Because
all right, gentlemen.
Where we are now, to me, is a defining.
Yeah. Okay.
Is a defining.
We'll go to break, but we'll bring in some more perspectives and seek clarification from both of you about the process of that lawmaking. Then we'll also have a civil society group. We'll have a lawyer if necessary, just to ensure that we get a rounded perspective on this subject matter. So do stay with us, because we will be right back. Welcome back. We'll continue in our conversation with Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesperson of the House, and Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who is a member of the Committee on INEC, a former chairman on capital markets. Honorable Kalu, now, well, you know, there are several questions, because I think Honorable Yusuf referenced in part about what the laws provide, and one or some persons may challenge certain things in court. And it's got to do with Section 78 of the 1999 Constitution, which gives that sole responsibility of election management and that procedure to INEC. So if the National House of Reps says, well, we're bringing in INEC to explain certain things, and then NCC to explain certain things, especially having heard and read about what the Senate procedure, how that turned out, many just think that the House may be thinking along that line. Are they mindful of Section 78 such that they don't strip INEC of their powers to conduct the elections, as some dailies report that that is what Senate has done?
Thank you, Chamberlain. The supremacy of the Constitution cannot be questioned. And the position of our laws has always been that where there is a conflict between the act of any other act of Parliament and the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution will always override, because it's supreme. It's a ground norm. And Section 78 is very clear. I'm not sure why our colleagues at the Senate did not address their mind to the provisions of that particular section of the Constitution, which have been highlighted by so many opinion leaders, and which is also very expressly stated, that it will affect the independency of the INEC, if the independence of INEC, if other authorities or persons begin to interfere with the process of conducting an election, and subjecting final approval of a location to be covered by electronic transmission or not falls under that particular element that the Section 78 was trying to cure. They need to be unbiased, they need to be independent, they don't need to be unduly influenced. And yes, I agree with him that people will go to court and contest it if it is not reversed, because Section 78 is supreme. Now, coming to the House, your question is, are we thinking alongside? No, we're not thinking alongside. We are thinking of bringing in the INEC chairman and the NCC as resource persons. They are coming to, highlight on the relevance or otherwise of some of the issues that we raise, and to give us clarifications that will help us process our decision. They are not coming to teach us about the law. They are coming to tell us about some of the questions we could not resolve ourselves. And it is allowed in the course of lawmaking that you invite experts in a particular field as a stakeholder to give opinion, expert opinion. So their expert opinion, we're going to harvest it. But remember, there are still other experts who are members of Parliament. So if the opinion is biased, we will grade it on a scale of transparency, on a scale of first parties to know whether it is in order or not in order, because this particular ninth assembly is filled with many professionals who are well versed in all these areas of life. So let's hear them, let's compare notes with them and know whether what they said during the committee engagement with the CSOs and other stakeholders, that they are able to do this, what has changed between then and now, and also NCC, what they have to say about coverage of network in Nigeria, and whether or not, what percentage that we have, and whether or not this will be able to survive. So those are that is why we are inviting them. We're not inviting them to help us go against Section 78 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, Honorable Kalu, I'm going to come to you on that same matter, but let me just quickly clear something with Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf. You referenced this earlier, Honorable, but I just want to be clear based on what Honorable Kalu has just said now. I want to believe that your committee had conversations with INEC and other relevant bodies concerning the electronic voting and transmission of results. Could you give us a snippet of what transpired when you consulted with INEC, if you did?
INEC has always been a very interested party in this consideration of this bill. So last year, March, before the outbreak of coronavirus, before we shut down, we had the retreat in Lagos. INEC, CSO, Senate, House of Rep on the Electoral Act. The only area of major disagreement was e-voting. The assumption was, and the conclusion was, that e-voting will not be possible yet. But transmission of results, there was no contention about it until January this year, when the report was to be put together. And we had Attorney General's office, INEC represented, civil society group, Senate, House of Rep, so that everybody is at the table. Transmission of election results is mere putting into the card reader the physical result you have in your hand. We are not in any way talking about voting via electronic means. So voting will be done by open secret. You go up the queue, get your ballot paper, go into a cubicle and vote. But at the end of the election, agents of all parties are available. They look at this, is your party score 1 and what have you. In your presence, it will be inputted. So that is, to my understanding, what transpired. However, any committee meeting, any committee report is a mere proposal until the House consider the report and adopt it. That's why room is given for amendment. So when it becomes too contentious at the committee level, it was agreed, bring it to the floor. Let's not allow every member to participate in decision making. Why some of us are not comfortable in living in the hand of INEC is that the Electoral Act as it is now left INEC with the responsibility of deciding either to use electronic or manual transmission. I'll come to realize that INEC have been selective in the 2019 election. Said it used manual. Ondo and Edo election, he said they use electronic transmission. And it was applauded. And INEC said they were test running the electric transmission in those elections. And they come to a conclusion that, yeah, we can do it. So that was, let's tie them with the law, rather than leaving it to the who's accomplices or whoever who is taking that decision. Why? Some of us have the opinion that this will take away ballot box snatching. This will take away collation center manipulation. The moment results are transmitted from the unit, anything contrary to what is recorded in the server will become questionable. Nobody is saying that will guarantee 100% free and fair election, but it will reduce the incidence of voting manipulation, result manipulation, and take us as a nation to another pedestal. So it is about Nigeria to some of us. It's about, as a people, what do we leave as legacy to the next generation coming, that we have moved to the next level. And I must be sincere with us. I feel very, very sad if anybody still think that the infrastructure available in Ghana, Senegal, Benin Republic is not available here. If at this level, if they are already doing e-voting, we can do e-voting. Don't forget that in 2009, 2010, in preparation for 2011 election, a lot of resources was voted to acquire this server and other infrastructure for INEC. At that time, in 2011 election, it was appealed that since we are just getting these infrastructures, let's still go with card reader alone. And the card reader did a lot for electionary process. 2011 election, it was adjudged one of the best elections because people were conscious of the fact that aside what the card reader had recorded as accreditation, to be difficult for you to bring in any other thing.
So
let me just
what was
the committee worked with relevant stakeholders.
All right.
To
So
come up with what we think is
for the avoidance of doubt,
Nigerians.
just shed some light on this so that people can equally understand it. What was the bone of contention on the floor on that 52? Is it that, because, I mean, the amendments by Honorable Faleke indicated that they want to combine both electronic transmission of results and voting? Or is it that the group that wanted electronic transmission of results didn't communicate properly, so people thought that, or the group that opposed it, thought you wanted both electronic voting and transmission of results? Because after manual voting and transmitting results electronically, two different things.
I don't understand why people voted against. I voted for that amendment because that amendment is clear. It's manual and electronic. As of today, the manual transmission is taken for granted. Even if you are doing electronic transmission, there must be a manual document that you transfer electronically. So his amendment is saying, let's do both. Let's have the manual, let's have the electronic. So if you have question with the manual, you go to the electronic to confirm. So I don't know why, maybe it was not clear enough to some people, but I don't doubt the fact that members overwhelmingly voted for that amendment. So, in my own hearing, but I'm not the presiding officer, the presiding officer feels otherwise. But where I have issues that if he feels otherwise, there's procedure, now rules to clear this. Well, I just done the division yesterday. All this will have been over. Because the beauty of democracy is that you air your view. If majority opinion is not in sync with yours, you have made your view very clear, but you accept the result. We'll have moved.
Let me ask Honorable Kalu one question now based on this same conversation that we are having. Honorable Kalu, based on this position and knowing that the committee that the House of Representatives set up already consulted with INEC elaborately and consulted with all relevant stakeholders, is this summoning or invitation given to INEC and the minister a way of saying that the House is not completely confident in its own committee?
Not at all. Not at all. But before I go into that, let me just help Honorable Yusuf with the question Chamberlain asked, the clarity on the pattern of voting and what was actually the issue. There were three positions. And that three positions, one was, let's return to status quo. Innovation, fighting against tradition through technology is always an issue. Now, some people say, let's return to the status quo, manual or nothing more. Honorable Toby, Deputy Minority Leader, came up and said, let us go for electronic transmission. It will help us the way you help Ondo and Edo. It was voted, the ayes were much, but the presiding took the position with the power of the gavel. Now, another amendment came after the intervention of the Speaker saying that amendments should be allowed. People should be allowed to express themselves. It's a democracy. Now, a second amendment came, which was the one of Honorable Faleke, who now said, okay, granted, but not conceding that manual is the best or electronic is the best. Let us have a middle approach to it, where the manual will be accommodated as well as the electronic, so that everybody's interest will be captured in there. It was also voted on, and it's very obvious what your television channels captured. Now, back to what you are saying. So that was the issue, and that was the analysis. Now, back to what you are saying about us having confidence in our committee. No, we have confidence in our committee. People like Honorable Yusuf is there, good hands and old hands, and a whole lot of other people that are in that committee. I'm also I'm almost in all the committees, so once in a while I visit to know what is going on. And you find out that it's not the issue of confidence at this level, because we cannot cast aspersion on the integrity of the committee that have been duly appointed by the leadership of the House. But this is an issue of clarification. There is a doubt with regards to whether or not it is doable based on this almighty network availability or non-availability. Let us know the geographical spread. Let the experts come and convince us to help us process our decision, because like he pointed out, it is the committee of the whole that is superior to the committee when they sit alone. When you bring your report, it is a mere proposal. It's not a final document. Until we go through it through that clause-by-clause consideration, you cannot be said to have done your job. And in the process of doing the clause-by-clause consideration, nothing limits us from acquiring more information, new education that will help us process a final position that will drive the agenda of the Nigerian people in any piece of legislation we are looking at. So that is just what it's all about.
So how come then, because this is so clear, how is it then that the Speaker kept on saying that, the Chair Committee of the Whole, Deputy Speaker Honorable Wase, was saying that in his constituency, they only have about 20% coverage, and as such, no such thing was going to happen. Whereas this position was that accommodates everybody, manual voting and electronic transmission of results. So his position was as though they were saying, well, because we have 20% coverage, and in other words, no, we can't have this. So is it that he didn't understand that it was the manual voting and electronic transmission? Because when they vote manually, it has nothing to do with network. It's just the transmission of those, which has always happened. So could you help us understand what was the thinking, if you can, on how he voted? Because many of the impression that he just deliberately just didn't want any of those to stand.
Well, to be honest and to be fair to the chair of the Committee of the Whole yesterday, the point ought to be made that the body language, the mood of the House yesterday, from the inception, was not a good one. Yesterday was a tense, I don't even know whether the idea of looking at that piece of legislation yesterday was the best. I say so because before we said our first prayer, the opening prayer, there was chaos in the House with regards to the 3%, 5% issue on the PIB. And I'm sure you have you said something about that in your other programs. So the tension was really up, and the House was already divided along some certain sentiments before we went into consideration of other report, especially the Electoral Bill, Electoral Act Amendment Bill report. So the noise in the House was much, the distraction was much. Probably the chairman did not hear clearly, because actually at the point I was assisting the chief whip when he went out to handle issue on the PIB. He asked me to take over the position of the chief whip, and I was sitting there. At the point, the chair spoke to me from the table. To be fair to him, he was not hearing what people were saying at the point. He said, "You are in charge of controlling the House. You are the chief whip. You are sitting on the chief whip seat. What are you doing? calm the house. So the house was in a very bad shape yesterday, and it influenced everybody. And whether you are the chair or the ones that are chaired, emotions were high, and we are all human beings. But you know what? There is still a window to correct all these issues. And that was why the leadership of the House, in their wisdom, agreed. Both the chair agreed, the deputy speaker, the majority leader, the minority leader, the chief whip, deputy chief whip, all these principal officers agreed that it would be good for us to stop where we were and then come back. And that is wisdom. A wise man do change his mind. You know, we wanted to finish the bill yesterday, the report, but when we saw the mood of the House and for the interest of Nigerians, we needed to pause. You know, and retreating is not withdrawal. You retreat a step backwards to enable you jump 2 steps forward. It's a wiser decision. I'm sure that by today, we're going to jump 2 steps forward, hoping that with the support of the constituents and the understanding of the members of the House who are encouraged that though we have our divergent views, though we celebrate our diversity, let the colors of our diversity reflect on how we define our demarcation. Let it reflect on how we uphold what interests Nigeria, how we put Nigeria first. That is where the beauty of our diversity will be celebrated by Nigerians. So I am reaching out to fellow members and the leaders of the House as we enter again today. Let us go with one thing in mind, and that thing is Nigerians are expecting a lot from us as leaders, and we are trustees of this position. Let's put Nigeria first. We may not be in the parliament forever, and the laws we are making today end up being what we'll complain about tomorrow. So let us be careful in what we do, because Nigerians are full of expectations.
Perhaps we'll come to what the House will do about those fisticuffs we saw between Honorable Gagdi, Honorable Gbela, because that's the highest lawmaking body in the country. I imagine students are watching, children are watching, Nigerians are watching, and they expect the best from lawmakers, right? The honorable lawmakers. So perhaps we'll come to that. But regarding how the House voted, which you referenced, and maybe, like you said, the deputy speaker didn't quite hear, because the atmosphere was tensed, as you said. But I noticed that even unlike what we saw at the Senate, when the lawmakers voted along party lines, I saw that even APC members were in support of what PDP members wanted regarding the electronic voting. Am I right?
Very.
Yeah, you see, this is not just the issue of party at the moment. We are talking about how to engage in global best practices. We are looking at how do we get more transparency out of our process of good governance in Nigeria. We're talking about how do we get accountability to raise the confidence of the governed in what we are doing, because the only way you control loyalty in the country and cohesion is when you build the confidence of the people you are leading, and they believe in the process through which you emerge. And so people are not looking at the colors of party. People are not looking at regions and all those sentiments. It's how do we become better? How do we become more credible in what we do? The fear of many has been, no, we are not experts in all these electronic systems. Somebody somewhere might bastardize the whole process by hacking into the system, declaring result even before the one from the field comes. What becomes of encryption, or whatever they call it, like WhatsApp? WhatsApp, we've used it over and over. It has not been broken into or hacked by. So if we want to go electronic, we must spend money to make sure that it is a protected system. That is the fear of many. And that, not that they don't want it. I interviewed one of my good friends who was pushing the agenda, Honorable Coco. And he took time to explain to me and said, my brother, why I'm pushing for this is not because I don't want it. But we are all afraid that it might be used to mutilate the result. It might be used to deny people their, credible
We'll still talk about that bit.
So if the fear is there, how do we cure the fear?
Yeah,
How
so
do we make sure that
if you don't
everybody
mind,
is carried along? That
we'll
is
talk
what we are
about that
interested
bit
in
as we
Parliament.
progress. But let me bring in Honorable Yusuf here at this point. In about a minute or less, we should go to break. So could you tell us, in consideration of what Honorable Carlo has just said, this last bit, how people wanted unity and moving Nigeria forward, PDP is in the minority. They had a minority leader. Why didn't he call for a division?
He must not be the minority leader that should call for division. But members call for division. I did call for division. Honorable Toby called for division. Honorable Chinda called for division. Many other across party, not just PDP, across party. A lot of APC members call for division. But in the judgment or in the judgment of the chair, he chose not to. We would, like I said earlier, we would not be having any reason to still go back to this matter today if we had got on division. Whoever, it will be so glaring. Wherever side wins, you don't question, you don't because you have lost insist that that decision is not right. If you've lost, your opinion is heard, but the majority position is carried. So I sincerely cannot answer why he didn't hit that decision, that direction, but there were calls for division. And my hands were up all through raising the point of order on the need for division, and a lot of other persons did. Maybe he didn't hear us, or maybe did not hear me. Was a bit of his mind about what that I sincerely cannot answer that. But I know people call for division.